Hello everyone, it's Terry from Sushi here, and today we are talking about rice, and we'll go through how we cook rice and how we prepare rice here in Sushi. What characterizes good sushi rice is reasonable stickiness and consistent texture throughout. We don't want grains to be still undercooked inside, no al dente, and individual grains to be clear. We don't want the rice to start disintegrating when you're mixing. The result of that is when you put it in your mouth, the rice should just break apart. You don't want that to sort of glue together in your mouth, basically. To begin with, we will talk about how you wash the rice. It's very important to wash the rice, and it just wash away that extra starch outside the rice, which prevents the rice being too sticky. And one of the worst thing you can do with rice for sushi is that very, very sticky rice. It just clogs up your mouth and it just hides all the flavors. Now, modern day rice, they are pretty well prepared when they come in from the shop, so you don't need to wash as much as they used to. And in the video you will see we just give it a really gentle wash, and on average we wash 3, maybe 4 times. All you want to do is put the water in and rinse it, drain the rice properly, repeat that 2-3 times, and you will see each time round the water gets a bit clearer. In your third wash, the water is pretty much see-through, and you can see directly through the water to the rice, and that tells you it's good enough to be cooked. Different age of the rice has different moisture inside. New rice, old rice, they have different properties, and we have investigated different ways to deal with that. And the one we find easiest is after washing, we just leave the rice to soak. And soak it for 2 hours. That's enough to compensate most of those moisture difference. Any longer, it's not very useful. In fact, that makes the rice grains a little bit more fragile, and when you cook it, they break apart a bit easier. Depending on the season, the soaking can absorb up to 20% of the rice weight. Then we will compensate for that in our rice cooking. If you don't have time to properly soak the rice, then the ratio we will use for cooking is 1 part rice and 1.2 parts water by weight. If you do soaking, it's 1 part water, 1 kilo water to about 0.9 kilo of water. It's very useful to have a scale when you cook the rice. That's the way to keep it consistent. When it comes to the actual cooking, we use pressure cooker. And if you can get hold of pressurized electric rice cooker, do that. That's highly recommended. That will save you a lot of work. But if you don't, and most people probably wouldn't want to invest in that, then if you have a pressure cooker at home, we'll show you how that it's done. The idea is we want to bring the pressure up, but we don't want to burn the bottom. You have a different heat source at home. You might have induction, you might have a hot plate, you might have gas. You want to find your way of doing it. But general idea is that initial cooking should be high temperature. Build up the pressure inside the pressure cooker, and then we turn the heat right down for the second stage of the cooking. We need to let the rice rest on the side. When we used to have gas here, and now we switch over to induction, the cooking time for the first stage, it's about 5 to 6 minutes. Any longer than that, you'll find you have too much pressure, or you might burn the bottom. Then the second stage of the cooking is somewhere between 7 to 9 minutes. And that is at the minimum heat. Once that's done, you take it off the heat and leave it on the side for half an hour. After that, we want to mix the rice straight away to make the sushi rice. The important part of mixing sushi rice is we want to do it while the rice is hot. Because if you do it when the rice is cold, the pores will all be closed and the vinegar would not be absorbed into the rice, and it would just be sticky and mushy on the outside and a bit hard in the inside. If you mix it when it's hot, you'll find after it cool down, the whole flavor penetrates through the grain of the rice, and it's a much nicer texture and the flavor. Okay, sushi vinegar. There's no mystery to it. 3 ingredients, that's all you need. Rice vinegar, sugar, and salt. The exact ratio, you can have your own recipe. You can even add extra flavor if you wish to. Well, we will give a recommendation and what we would do here. And roughly, it's about 100 milliliters of rice vinegar. In the video, you will see we actually use a red rice vinegar. It's just got a bit more, a bit intensive flavor compared to the white rice vinegar. But, you know, take your pick. It doesn't even need to be rice vinegar if you want to. If you want to experiment, feel free to. So 100 milliliters of rice vinegar, 12 grams of sugar, and 1.2 grams of salt. And using weight is probably the best way to measure things. Volume can be a bit hit and miss. One thing about the sugar content, depending on what your palate is like, you can go up, you can go down. That is very flexible. And in the more traditional Edomae style sushi, the vinegar tends to be a bit less sweet and it's stronger on the vinegar, less on the sugar. It's just to help bring out the flavor of the fish and also a little bit less sickly. Now with the rice mixing, what you need, and very important, you don't need a wooden bowl. If you don't have it, sometimes that can be a big investment, but a big bowl and the big spatula, that gives the rice plenty of space. Properly break up each grain of rice when we are mixing. And you will see in the video, it's using that cutting motions and lifting the rice up. We don't press, it's just letting the weight of the rice to mix into the vinegar naturally. And that way it keeps each grain of rice consistent, and it also helps not to break up individual grains of rice. The tricky part here is how much do you mix. Each round of rice cooking can be different. It's a very fickle thing. So you will find it when you're doing that at home yourself. The stickiness of the end sushi rice, you can adjust at the mixing stage. The more you mix, the more you work the rice, the stickier it gets. So if you find the rice today cooked, it's not sticky enough, you can mix it a little bit more. That will help them to bind together later when you're making makis or nigiri. If you find the rice is a little bit stickier today, firstly, mix less at once. Secondly, just be gentle with it and don't over mix it. Then that way you can balance out the cooking and the mixing and give you a consistent sushi rice every time.